Hello, I'm Evelyn the Unstable. Welcome to my YouTube channel. This is my first video, so I'd like to start by telling you a little bit about myself. I'm Black and Mexican, and I'm a vegetarian, queer, and a witch. I also have PCOS, generalized anxiety disorder, and a mood disorder. I come from a home with domestic violence, and I'm a sexual assault survivor. I made this channel because a lot of people of color are told that therapy is for crazy people, or grow up to think abuse is normal. And that will never be true. It's definitely far from it. Since we can't talk about everything in this video, I'd like to start with mental health. And first off, I'd like to start by reading some facts from the website of Mental Health America. Okay, there. 13.4% of the U.S. population identifies as Black or African American. Of those, over 16% reported having a mental health illness in the past year. That's over 7 million people. That's more people than the population of Chicago, Houston, and Philadelphia combined. As far as prevalence goes, Black and African American people living below poverty are twice as likely to report serious psychological distress than those living over 2 times the poverty level. Adult Black and African Americans are more likely to have feelings of sadness, helplessness, or worthlessness than adult whites. Blacks and African Americans are less likely than white people to die from suicide at all ages. However, Black and African American teenagers are more likely to attempt suicide than white teenagers. And in the Latinx and Hispanic community, 18.3% of the United States is estimated to be Latino or Latinx or Hispanic. Of those, over 16% reported having mental health issues in the past year. That is over 10 million people, more than the number of people who live in New York City. By 2060, the number of Latinx. As far as attitudes go, religion can be a protective factor for mental health in the Latinx and Hispanic communities. Faith and prayer can also be contributed to the stigma against mental illness and treatment, demons, lack of faith, sinful behavior. So targeting religious institutions to help encourage good mental health and treatment seeking is very important. There is also a perception in the Latinx and Hispanic communities, especially among older people, that discussing problems with mental health can create embarrassment and shame for the family, resulting in fewer people seeking treatment. For me, growing up with a Mexican mother, I do remember in, I'd say, early middle school, asking my mother to see a therapist. And the first thing she told me was that I wasn't crazy, so I didn't need one. And honestly, that has stuck with me forever. Every time I would think about seeing a therapist, which I did ask her multiple times, that was just the first thing she'd tell me. And I know it's not her fault, she was taught the same thing, and I'm not going to say it's not like that anymore. It's more of an idea that we can do so much better. We can help each other. But there's such a stigma towards helping each other just because we don't want to be seen as crazy. But you're not crazy. We're not crazy. We just need a little bit of help. And back to the Black and African American community, They hold beliefs related to stigma, psychological openness, and help seeking, which in turn affects their coping behaviors. The participants in studies were not very open to acknowledging psychological problems, but they were somewhat open to seek mental health services. 30% of the participants reported having a mental health illness or receiving treatment for mental illness. Black and African American men are particularly more concerned about the stigma. Cohort effects, exposure to mental illness, and increased knowledge of mental illness are factors that could potentially change beliefs about symptoms of mental health and mental illness. Participants appeared apprehensive about seeking professional help for mental health issues, which is consistent with previous research. However, participants were willing to seek some form of help. I will be going back and forth between facts, just so you know. But it's honestly not funny. Like, this is such an issue, and there's no other way to tackle it than to go after it ourselves. But due to the stigma, we choose not to. And back to Latinx and Hispanic communities, suicidal thoughts, plans, and attempts are also rising among Latinx and Hispanic young adults. While still lower than the overall U.S. population, aged 18 to 25, 8.6%, which is 650,000, of Latinx and Hispanic 18 to 25-year-olds had serious thoughts of suicide in 2018 compared to the 7%, 402,000 in 2008. 3% made a plan in 2018, that's 224,000, compared to the 2% in 2008, which is 116,000, and 2%, 151,000 made an attempt in 2018 compared to the 1.6%, which is 90,000 in 2008. Binge drinking, smoking, cigarettes, and marijuana, illicit drug use, and prescription pain reliever misuse are more frequently used among Latinx and Hispanic adults with mental health illnesses. Now back to the Black and African American community. They are overrepresented in our jails and prisons, as we all know. Black and African American people make up 13% of the general population, but nearly 40% of the prison population. In 2016, the imprisonment rate for Black and African American men, which is 2,417 per 100,000 black male residents, was more than 6 times greater than that for white men, 401 per 100,000 white male residents. And the imprisonment rates for Black and African American women, 97 per 100,000 Black and African American female residents, was almost double that for white women, 49 per 100,000 white female residents. Black and African American people with mental health conditions, specifically those involving psychosis, are more likely to be in jail or prison than those of other races. That was only a few facts about the Black and African American communities, as well as the Latinx and Hispanic communities. But if you'd like to read more, go to Mental Health America Online, or look up the website, which is mhanational.org, to read more. As a kid, I never accepted the answer my mother gave me when I asked her to see a therapist. But I would say I was a more open-minded kid. And growing up with that idea and staying the same, I kept that stigma away from myself. I'm sure there's still other stigmas I do have, and I definitely can't think of them right now, but I'm definitely happy I was more open-minded and seeking help for my mental health. I do take medication, and I do speak to a therapist. And when I need to, I journal, I speak to friends. If you can't afford it, or you just don't want to see a mental health professional, always remember that you can talk to someone. Do you have a friend? Do you have someone you can trust? A guidance counselor? I don't know. Whoever you have. Just know that I'm sure they'd be willing to listen. Just talk to them and see what they say. I'm sure they're there for you. I'm sure they will be there for you best they can. That's it for today's video, and I hope to catch you next time on my channel.